Water gushed like a broken dam, pooling around my boots in a muddy mess that had no business being there. I stared at the spot where my main supply pipe, sliced clean and slapped with a shoddy duct tape cap, sat mocked by a laminated sign. Unauthorized water use. HOA enforcement. The punchline? The HOA had zero claim over my land, but Kerren, oh Kerren, had no idea I'm the one who engineered the water system she depends on. She just made the gravest error of her reign. It all kicked off after a serene 3-day fishing trip. I go, off-grid monthly to unplug, chasing trout, savoring silence, with just a cooler of sandwiches and the river's hum. No bars, no emails, pure peace. But when I rolled back to my ranch and twisted the tap to fill the dog's bowls, something was wrong. No flow. The hose? Dry. The sinks? Barren. That's when I trekked to the fence line and saw it. There, at the edge of my property, where my water line feeds the lower pasture, the soil was churned. Fresh tire tracks crisscrossed with boot prints led to a hacked PVC pipe, deliberately severed and sealed with a smug sign, wrapped in garish yellow HOA tape, like a crime scene. Pinned to a nearby stake, a Willow Creek HOA flyer oozed passive-aggressive glee. All unpermitted irrigation tied to shared groundwater is being disconnected per neighborhood ordinance. I stood there, dumbfounded, for a solid 5 minutes. My 47-acre ranch, fiercely independent of any HOA, wasn't in their records, leases, or county files. That pipe? My creation, fed by my reservoir, laid with my sweat and a rented backhoe in '93. I scouted the property line. No further intrusions. Just this brazen act. But I noticed something else. Tire marks from a silver Lexus SUV and a boot print with a snapped heel. Kerren's rhinestone-crusted sandals, flashy as if she were strutting a runway, gave her away. And the way the Lexus veered onto my grass. Only Kerren would assume her HOA badge granted her free rein. So I did what any level-headed, battle-tested rancher would. Snapped photos, logged the damage, and strolled back to my barn, whistling. Not out of joy, but because I knew something. Kerren didn't. Long ago, when the HOA's cookie-cutter homes were just blueprints, the developer struck a deal with me. City water was too pricey, so I offered my line to supply their 30 houses for a modest monthly fee, with them maintaining their pump. The contract, buried in county archives, lapsed a decade ago when the HOA swapped leaders and forgot to renew. Yet the system, every drop fueling their lawns, faucets, and koi ponds, remains mine. Now they'd cut me off from my own pipe, thinking they'd taught the rogue rancher a lesson. Kerren probably sashayed back to her HOA meeting, crowing about her triumph, maybe even handing out metaphorical gold stars to her clipboard cronies. But she just handed me the keys to her downfall. Inside my barn, behind a fortress of hay, bales sits an old breaker box with 3 switches, one for irrigation, one for pressure, and a third tucked under a flap labeled Backup Flow Gate in faded pencil. That one controls the entire HOA system. With a single flick, I killed the Einamest flow in an instant. 29 homes, a clubhouse, and 2 ornamental fountains went as dry as a desert. The chaos erupted fast. By dusk, Kerren's shrieks echoed from 4 lots away. Something about the Johnson's pool draining mid-swim, the Miller twins, jamming a toilet with cereal. Plumbers were called. The county was dialed. And I sat on my porch, beer in hand, watching sprinklers choke and wilt across the cul-de-sac. I didn't crave vengeance, not at first. But when someone slices your water line, slaps a smug sign on it, and tries to fine you for using what you built, after decades of keeping their roses blooming, it gets personal. Kerren had turned this into a power grab, flexing her control over a man who'd long ditched red tape and politics. What she didn't grasp, what she couldn't, is that power only holds if the other side doesn't control the valve. As the sun sank and the first frantic HOA emails pinged across the neighborhood, I leaned back, tipped my hat, and murmured. To my dog, finally lapping from a well-drawn pail, "Let the showdown begin." Kerren's face tomorrow, when she couldn't even rinse her toothbrush, would be worth its weight in gold. And I was just warming up. By sunrise, Willow Creek's pristine streets were unraveling. Kerren's dream HOA utopia, her self-styled kingdom, was cracking. Sprinklers, once a synchronized symphony, sat silent. Fountains stood stagnant, pumps gasping. Neighbors expecting morning showers twisted faucets to nothing. The group chat buzzed with escalating panic. Kerren played it smooth at first, texting vague promises of a temporary fix and a technician on the way. But by mid-morning, when her own lawn shriveled and her koi pond turned to sludge, her facade crumbled. I lounged on my porch, coffee in one hand, binoculars in the other, savoring the meltdown like a front-row seat to a farce. Kerren stormed house to house, clipboard clutched, her crisp blouse wilting as she berated anyone in earshot. I watched her punt a garden gnome in fury and nearly wipe out on a slick sidewalk patch from yesterday's overwatering. She hammered on the Dawson's door, scolding Mrs. Dawson about unauthorized water use. Ironic, given there was none to use. Then she jabbed a finger toward my ranch, flailing like I was the villain in her personal soap opera. Eventually, I sauntered to the gate splitting my land from their cul-de-sac, not to stir trouble, just to soak in the spectacle. Sure enough, Kerren spotted me and charged, a hurricane in heels. Her face was beet red, her voice a siren before she hit the fence. "You cut the water, didn't you?" "How'd I know it was you?" I kept my tone steady. "Just minding my own here. Maybe your board should check what they sliced when they hit my pipe." Her eyes widened. She hadn't considered she'd tampered with something beyond her grasp. Still, she doubled down. "You were stealing from our system." "That pipe was an illegal tap. I fixed it." "You mean the pipe I laid before your HOA existed? The one fed by my 93 reservoir? Just clarifying." Kerren froze, her mouth flapping open, then shut. She had no comeback. She didn't know the water source, just assumed her paperwork ruled all. She tried again. "Then why's our water gone when your valve's off?" "Because you never built your own system. You've been piggybacking on mine for years. Your HOA was supposed to renew my lease. They didn't, so it expired. Technically, you're all squatting on my water." "You're bluffing." "Nope. County records don't lie. Check them, right next to the zoning docs that say your authority stops at that hedge." Silence hit like a brick. Her confidence cracked, and that pause was sweeter than her parched lawn. By lunch, the HOA chat was a battlefield. David, a neighbor who waved when I passed, leaked screenshots of Kerren's unraveling. She'd once fined him for an unapproved apple tree, forcing him to axe it. Now, he gleefully shared her desperate posts. The board was lost, residents were livid, kids wailed over a dry splash pad. Someone even floated ditching the HOA entirely. Plumbers swarmed. One resident rented a water truck to fill their tank, but nothing worked. The neighborhood ran on my single inflow. I'd built it as a favor long ago, and that favor was done. That afternoon, a silver pickup rolled. Up, Miguel, a plumber Kerren hired, stepped out. "Sir, the HOA told me to reconnect a line here, but this looks like your land, and that pipe's yours, right?" "Spot on," I said. "Touch it without my say-so, and I'll file trespassing charges." Miguel grinned, tipped his cap. "No problem. I'll mark it inaccessible, and bill them for the trip. HOAs, man, not my first rodeo." I handed him a soda, and we swapped stories on my porch. He'd seen worse, but not by much. At sunset, my mailbox held a gem. A $10,000 HOA fine for unauthorized irrigation, signed by Kerren. I tucked it on my desk and drafted a letter. Not to the board, but to every Willow Creek homeowner. Clear, professional, it laid out the water system's history, the expired lease, and my offer. Restore access for a fair monthly fee, but only if Kerren resigned. By dawn, every doorstep would have that letter. For the first time since Kerren brandished her clipboard like a scepter, Willow Creek's residents had a choice: water and green lawns, but only if their cul-de-sac queen abdicated her throne. At first, Willow Creek's residents hesitated. Change. Creeps slowly in a place this manicured. But by noon, my phone hummed with a voicemail from Mr. Langley, a soft-spoken East Side homeowner. He praised my letter's clarity, said he and his wife were ready to sign the agreement. Happy to pay. The modest fee for flowing water. Then came a second message from a 20-year veteran of the neighborhood, fed up with HOA fines for trivialities like a curb-parked tire. Kerren had crossed a line, and she was all in for my deal. I leaned back in my office, coffee in hand, replaying. Voicemails until the inbox overflowed. The tide was turning. Residents were rallying. I knew Kerren would strike back soon. She did, with an emergency HOA meeting that afternoon. A mass text and hand-delivered flyers summoned everyone to the clubhouse for a critical water systems update. Curiosity got me. I scrubbed. Up, threw on a clean button-up, and slipped into the back of the clubhouse as a guest. Silent, but all eyes. What unfolded was pure theater. Kerren stood at the front, sweat beading on her forehead, mascara smudged from rage or panic. She launched into a tirade, branding my water shutoff a hostile attack and accusing me of extorting the HOA. She called me a fraud, a saboteur, even claimed I'd forged the lease documents I'd shared. She boasted of legal experts and swore the situation was handled. Then came the knockout. Tran, a reserved retiree who rarely spoke, stood and cleared his throat. As a former land use attorney, he'd vetted my documents and cross-checked county records. Everything Frank wrote is true, he said. The HOA has no claim to his water line, and Kerren's pipe cutting could be vandalism, or worse. The room went still. Kerren's face blanched, her grip on power slipping like sand. Whispers turned to bold questions. How much had Kerren blown? On those gaudy planters nobody wanted? Why did she cherry-pick rules? Why no board elections? It was like a fog lifted, and the crowd smelled freedom. Kerren scrambled, announcing a unity barbecue for the next evening on the clubhouse lawn, promising a rented water truck to revive the fountains. It reeked of desperation, a hollow pageant to cling to control. I let her run with it. That morning, I'd cracked the pressure gate just enough to feed one clubhouse spigot, not out of kindness, but to see her next move. The barbecue was a fiasco. Grills sputtered, chairs wobbled, and warm soda passed for refreshment with no ice. The water truck never arrived, and 3-day-old portable toilets stank worse than the burgers. Kerren's grand finale? A misting fan hooked to the lone spigot I'd rigged with a sulfur water filter. When she flipped it on, a rotten egg mist drenched the crowd. A woman yelped, a grill toppled, a kid sobbed. The fan choked out in 30 seconds, the hose hissing air. The party collapsed in chaos. Kerren stood frozen, soaked, her face a crimson mask of defeat. Residents scattered, muttering, shaking their heads. Her reign was over, and she knew it. Back at the ranch, I didn't gloat. Kerren wasn't done. People like her never fade quietly. But slicing my pipe had sparked a fire she couldn't douse. I hadn't touched the backup reservoir yet, and if she pushed again, I had more than water to withhold. Witnesses, legal muscle, and now the neighborhood's trust. The barbecue's fallout spread like wildfire. By morning, 3 homes displayed water jugs on their porches, notes proclaiming they'd signed my deal. A 4th staked a hand-painted sign in their dead lawn. We want water, not HOA lies. Kerren's empire was crumbling, blade by blade. True to form, she didn't retreat. She charged, reckless and loud. I'd just finished my coffee when I spotted her, ditching her heels for black sweats, a hoodie, and oversized sunglasses, thinking she was slick. But her silver Lexus with shh. Plates screamed her name. From my barn window, I watched her, park near the fence where she'd cut my pipe. She slunk out, toolbox in tow, crouching like a cartoon bandit. I didn't pounce. I wanted her plan. She dug up the mangled cap, gloved hands fumbling with a wrench, trying to siphon my water without. Alerting the neighborhood. It wasn't anger I felt. Her sheer audacity was almost admirable. I dialed the sheriff, reporting a known trespasser tampering with my infrastructure, backed by security footage. They promised a deputy soon, Then I flipped a barn switch, triggering a custom valve I'd installed for emergencies. It didn't release water. It hissed air and sprayed bright red dye mixed with biodegradable foam. Harmless but messy. Kerren's scream pierced the air as the valve erupted, coating her in what looked like cherry frosting. She dropped her wrench, flailing, and bolted from the pipe. I stayed put, waiting. 15 minutes later, a sheriff's cruiser arrived. Deputy Mason, a county veteran, recognized me and tipped his hat. "Got your call, Frank. You say you've got video." "Inside," I said, playing the crystal clear footage. Kerren, tools in hand, digging on my land. Mason whistled. "Trespassing. Vandalism. Utility theft. We've got her." They approached Kerren, still scrubbing red foam off her arms with purse wipes. She lied, claiming a community pipe inspection as HOA president. Mason wasn't buying it. "Save it for court," he said, escorting her to her Lexus to follow them to the station. Her foam-streaked walk of shame, with neighbors peeking from windows, was better than any blockbuster. Word spread like lightning. Security footage hit the neighborhood message board. Residents were floored, some livid, others unsurprised. Few diehards defended her, but none could justify trespassing. One woman noted Kerren had called me the criminal days earlier. Another recalled her bragging about handling the rancher like a vigilante. Then a curveball. A local reporter. April knocked on my door. A neighbor had tipped off the press. She'd spoken to residents who'd signed my deal and wanted my side. I hesitated. I don't do spotlight, but agreed if she stuck to the truth. By the reservoir, I walked her through the system's history, showed the documents, and demoed the backup valve. Her sharpest question: why not fight them sooner? "I wasn't fighting," I said. "I just wanted peace. But they cut my pipe and called it justice. That's not how neighbors act." The story aired that night. Rancher reclaims water rights after HOA leader's sabotage. Kerren's foam-splattered photo went viral, her sheriff standoff sealing her infamy. Residents lined up to sign my agreement. By dusk, 20 homes had water. Flowing, sprinklers humming, toilets flushing, fountains gurgling. Kerren's house? Still dry by principle, not spite. She hadn't signed. The neighborhood meeting was set for 5 p.m., but by 4:30, the clubhouse lot was packed. Clusters of residents buzzed, waving papers, glancing at Kerren's house. Now a wilted shell, grass yellowed, roses brittle. Nobody had seen her, and nobody cared. The vote was all that mattered. Inside, chairs crammed every corner, the air thick with anticipation. Leonard, the jittery HOA president, took the podium, mumbling about unity and procedures. No one bit. He finally announced a motion to oust Kerren permanently for her unauthorized acts. Cheers erupted before he finished. The floor opened, and stories poured out. Kerren shaming a woman for holiday lights, fining a man for a wrong fence shade. Not one soul defended her, not even Leonard, sweating buckets. The vote was unanimous, every hand up. Kerren was gone. Some clapped. Others sighed. A few sat stunned that the queen had fallen. In under 10 minutes, a decade of tyranny crumbled. Then, unexpectedly, Leonard called me forward. I hadn't planned to speak, but eyes turned my way, so I stepped up, skipping the podium, voice plain. "I'm not here to crow," I said. "I didn't cut your water to punish. I stopped giving. Away what's mine. Every drop in those pipes comes from a system I built. My hands, my money, my land. All I wanted was to be left alone." Then I offered a truce. "I'll restore full water to every Willow Creek home. No interruptions, no shortages, just steady flow for a fair monthly fee, locked in unless we all agree to adjust. One condition, no HOA rules on my land, no inspectors, no fines. I live by my code and expect the respect I give." The applause wasn't wild, just steady, heartfelt, like a wrong had been righted. After, neighbors shook my hand, some apologizing for their silence, others grateful I'd stood firm. A few asked to bring their kids to see the ranch's chickens. That night, under a starlit sky, I sipped sweet tea on my porch, watching sprinklers flicker to life across the cul-de-sac, their soft arcs glinting in the moonlight. Peace at last. Kerren's house stayed dark, dry, and silent. She hadn't signed the agreement I sent, same as everyone else's. No tricks, no taunts. She'd locked herself in, curtains drawn, invisible. Whispers said she was trying to sell, but buyers balked at a waterless home tied to her tarnished name. Her lawn was a brittle graveyard, her roses mere twigs. Every morning at 7:30, my sprinkler, on a timer, misted just shy of her driveway. Pure coincidence, of course. Willow Creek began to breathe again. The board held real elections, rules eased, and folks planted flowers they loved, not just approved ones. A little free library popped up by the park, small but meaningful. Humanity crept back. I stuck to my rhythm, feeding livestock, mending fences, tinkering in the barn. The reservoir brimmed, the water flowed, and my gate stayed free of clipboards. A new sign said it all: private land, private water. Respect goes both ways. I didn't need victory, just solitude. But if you slice my pipe and claim what's mine, expect the pressure to hit back, not with fists, but facts, patience, and a well-timed valve. 3 weeks post-vote, Willow Creek was the neighborhood it should have been. Kids biked freely. No helmet patrols. Smiles replaced wary glances as folks hosed down porches. Lawns revived. Laughter mingled with the hum of sprinklers. The saga wasn't forgotten, but the relief was universal. Kerren remained a ghost. Her house, blinds shut, mailbox stuffed, sat lifeless. Gossip said she'd listed it quietly, but her agent struggled. Buyers quizzed the water issue and her viral foam fiasco. One reportedly asked if the sprinkler clip was real. The agent offered a year's bottled water to close. No takers. My life resumed its cadence. Chickens clucking, cats bask. What's your source? In sunbeams. Land. Work as always, but I'd kept one card close, not out of secrecy, just timing. One golden afternoon, I decided to share it. Mr. Tran, the attorney who'd backed me at the meeting, dropped by with his wife's pie and a draft of the new HOA charter. I declined meddling, but agreed to skim it. Over porch talk, birds, irrigation, apple trees, I took him past the reservoir. Everyone knew, beyond the gnarled oak to a vine-choked pump house. Inside, I revealed the real ace. A 42-foot well tapping an ancient aquifer, built post-lease slaps, ready for days like these. Tran nodded, hands clasped, getting it wasn't. About dominance but readiness, armor against bullies with badges. Quietest rebellion I've ever seen, he chuckled. We walked back, pie scent trailing. Days later, an anonymous flyer hit mailboxes, decrying my deal as unfair and urging an independent HOA system. It was shrill, illogical, and most trashed it. Some neighbors laughed. One suggested a bulletin board. Camera for Kerren's nocturnal antics. I didn't need it. My setup was untouchable. Then a county official arrived, clipboard in hand, probing private utilities after a concern. I knew the source. I gave him the full tour. Reservoir. Well, pipes, plus all documents. Old lease, county letters, resident agreements. He snapped photos, signed off on compliance, and left with a nod. Cleanest setup I've seen. He said, "You should teach this." By month's end, Kerren's house emptied. Movers hauled her furniture, a dusty sedan trailed out, and she vanished without a wave. No one waved back. Her name was erased from HOA records, the charter rewritten. Willow Creek belonged to its people, not a petty tyrant. I swapped my gate sign for carved wood. Private land, private water. Mutual respect required. Some chuckled, others nodded knowingly. Every morning, sprinklers sang. Not because I demanded, but because I kept my word. I didn't want war, just quiet. Not power, but peace. And all it took to silence the noise was a pipe, a plan, and the patience to let truth turn the valve.